Hey, welcome to episode 8 of the Justin Johnston Show. I'm Justin Johnston. I'm a commercial real estate broker selling, leasing commercial industrial properties in Utah and Salt Lake. I say Utah County and Salt Lake for the past 28 years. And this is Blake Moore. He's our editor, curator, and content provider. He understands all the aspects of this, and he has his license. We work together, so welcome everybody else to the show. In past episodes of this, and you've seen in our shorts, we've had a lot of discussion of the artificial intelligence. It started from the Jordan Peterson ChatGPT conversation that he had, which, if you know Jordan Peterson, you follow him, the way that he talks about it, he's one of the few guys that actually kind of makes me get that scared feeling inside.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Because he's addressing it. He's put already so much thought to it, right? More than anybody else. His health's declining, everything else, because of the severity. I think he's actually getting better, and hopefully he's around for a long, long time. But, you know, I've listened to that since then, you know, because you were saying, hey, I've got this queued up. I don't want to tell you what it is. Let's get your response to it. And we had, at that time, since then, we've had a bunch of artificial intelligence discussions. And I think where this goes, right? Everybody's like, for some reason, it's our human nature. Mm-hmm. We get to where we're like, we start thinking the worst things, how we're going to be eliminated. We don't necessarily see the benefits that it could actually help us become educated easier, be smarter. I mean, Google's made me a lot smarter. YouTube how-to videos has made me, you know, because I know how to do it. I did something a while ago, and then they show me something that's like, here's the easy way to do it. It's really an amazing time we live. Uh-huh. You know, you think about training in the past and being, I guess it was a protege of somebody that was a master at a trade, or something that you would take years to get, just because of what it took, hands-on. And yet to watch something, and we've heard that, a picture's worth 1,000 words, 1,000,000 words, or whatever. It captures in that moment, right? Sometimes the picture may be a little skewed, and it's like, see what he's doing, you know? Cause it's like, oh no, if you went to the next frame, he's not trying to steal that thing. Very interesting stuff. So maybe in lieu of all that stuff, one of the articles that we kind of have been discussing is ways to benefit us, right? Mm-hmm. So Fortune, I'm not sure the day that this came out, but there's an article in Fortune recently came out in the last couple weeks, talks about 3D printing, essentially manufacturing human tissue and organs. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's pretty exciting, right? I've known different people. I mean, think about it, right? I mean, they're healthy. They get pancreatic cancer. Nobody even knew, and that's like one of the most painful. And it's like, if you get that, if that's the diagnosis, it's like, get your affairs in order, get home, right? It's going to be fast, right? Mm-hmm. Depending on when they caught it, maybe even a week or so. You know, I've heard some people, it's just like, boom, they weren't feeling good. Yeah. But by the time, you know, they got in and got things checked, which is very interesting. Too late. Yeah. And I think what is going to happen, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in on some of this stuff, is that our doctors are going to become better diagnostics. Hopefully you'll go to a doctor that's really good. It's like, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on? Yeah. They can read. You're giving blood samples. You're doing those types of things where you're hedging ahead, right? You're not going in for that thing. It's like, you know, like me, I put a little bit of weight on. My diabetes aren't really bad, but there's a couple key indicators, right? It's like, hey, you got family that's had some problems with this. Yeah. How can you do that? Well, I mean, maybe they can print me a new brain. Yeah. A new brain to say, hey, just push yourself away from that Coca-Cola and that extra steak that you didn't, you're already full, right? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So I don't know on that, but that's but overall it's exciting. When we were talking about, you were saying, hey, people are living 80s, you know, which is actually a pretty good long life.
Yeah, it is.
I think people of your generation are going to be 100, 120.
Maybe even 150, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if you get that key, right?
Yeah, well, because like we were just talking about the pancreatic cancer, do you think they would be able to take out your pancreas and then print out a new one and put it in and have that fix the problem?
Well, so if you go to the article, and we're reading it, and we're not
Yeah.
trying to quote it verbatim, it's more of just an interesting, right? It's
Yeah.
we're trying to find things that are like, hey, how does it enhance our life? So what it appears, they've already grown some, I don't know if you call them more simple, but kidneys,
Yeah.
where they're actually just filtering and that type of stuff. It's not
Yeah.
as sophisticated, right? It doesn't. It's not like a heart that's pumping or
Yeah.
processing some other things. Maybe releasing that. But yeah, what they're saying is there's 106,000 people at any given time in the United States on the donor list,
Yeah.
right? And that ranges from. I mean, so that's. I wish they wouldn't almost. I wish they'd say for like life-saving changes, because I know that includes like maybe somebody that's going blind,
Yeah.
or some other, things that could happen, not life-threatening.
Yeah, it's not as serious.
But the point that this article is making is that, hey, there's always some type of a transition, right? I mean, our body, we could be O negative blood, we could have very similar things, but, if you go to put somebody else's tissue in your body,
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest problems is that rejection, right? It's an ongoing issue out of the gate. So here you found somebody, they put their organs on as a donor list. They were going to give it out. They get it there. It's healthy. They put it in the body, and it might reject. What they're saying is that we've already made a lot of these things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they've made them. They haven't really used them. But one of the examples on there is an ear. So I think either right or left ear. A girl was born. She actually had the hearing capability, but the skin, it just didn't form the ear. And so, she lived with it. It wasn't a life-threatening thing. But over time, as this thing got a little closer to
Yeah.
actually happening, they took her tissues and made, which is crazy to me, right? So
Yeah.
engineered it and made it and let her ear, part of it's growing, part of it's the printing. We're talking about 3D printing of
Yeah.
these organs, which is just crazy. So they've got to get some of your tissue and then make it and duplicate it. And then, of course, it's not the two left ears. You get
Yeah.
it's a matching one,
Uh-huh.
or maybe with some other characteristics as it would say that it should be built. Some of them could be like that. Some other things. And she's got an ear, and they were actually able to do it, and it was as simple as almost cutting the tissue,
Yeah.
lining it all up, making sure that it was there, and then sewing it on. And they didn't compare it to that, but the way I would look at it is like, hey, you sliced your finger good, you can get some super glue, or you stitch it back together.
Yeah.
It's just your tissue to your tissue. You might end up with a little bit of scar there.
Uh-huh.
You have a good plastic surgeon, maybe not, right? But
Yeah.
the point is that that's what's happening.
Well, so I don't know if you even know this, but did it say anything in the article about if it felt like actual skin, like on the ear?
It
thing?
is skin.
It is skin.
It's,
so
it was.
so
it's
they
skin.
take skin from your body like a skin graft almost? Or is it just like a little bit of skin and then it like grows itself?
From this. Well, let's see. So he says, what's interesting to me is you've got cartilage in your ear.
Yeah.
I mean, there's different components to it, and then you get to that, and it's soft tissue
Yeah.
that's got to connect with little microscopic blood vessels,
Yeah.
right? It's skin.
Yeah.
You gotta. So yeah, he talks about. So what's interesting is, so they get the tissue. I think they got it from the other ear, but I don't think it has to come from the other ear. And then they say to duplicate it. Well, it's printing this living tissue from your cells that you had. So I don't know how far they grow it. I mean, this is, of course, we're talking about the benefits. We're not scientists, but
Yeah.
the process, when they explain it, it's pretty straightforward and simple from the standpoint. So, not to read directly from here, but the doctor who treats birth defects, it's for this ear. He said more than 25 years and recognized expert the field. He was into some of these grafts and things like that, right? That would have to. It wasn't going to look pretty, but he could do it. And then
Yeah.
they had other breakthroughs that he just embraced and kept doing that. And so it was his first implant, 3D bioprinter using the woman's own cartilage cells. So I don't know if they got it from that other ear, is what I thought, but he said the term that he used was very uneventful, right? I mean, when they were doing the fake heart, which was just a and when they put the first pig heart
Yeah.
into somebody as a transplant to
Uh-huh.
so they could live long enough till they got a regular heart. I mean, these are things that they like stop the daily programming here, or days of our lives.
Yeah.
This is what's happened.
Yeah.
They just made a huge breakthrough, and that was that type of stuff. Whereas this is almost like an obscure article,
Mm-hmm.
and he considers the surgery very uneventful.
Just like
And-
another day
and
at
he
the
said, from the
office.
realm of near fiction to the germ of an idea to actual science, 3D bioprinting is advancing across all aspects of the medical research and industry. And he just talks about, so yeah, they used the cartilage, printed it. It doesn't go into what they did for the actual skin or tissue, other than, you don't sew cartilage onto a body, so I mean,
Yeah.
there's something there, right? You start with the cartilage and then you do it.
Uh-huh.
Crazy. And
Yeah.
so we know where that's going, right? I mean, it's something that's actually been, around the world, right? So it's a lot of times some of these things are in the United States, we're progressing. A lot of these doctors, they're from Poland and other universities from around the world where they've made breakthroughs and they've shared that technology, right, of
Yeah.
how to do it. We kind of know that process, right? But then to 3D print something that fits for that person with their own body cells, it's
Yeah.
just crazy. I mean, it's stuff that really, if you think about it, it's like even in our modern time with all the benefits there, it still sounds pretty fantastic that you'd
Yeah.
say, like go to a machine and have it printed. That's what it's doing.
Yeah.
right? Obviously, there's something there, but it is 3D printing, which to me, 3D printing alone is quite an amazing thing.
Yeah.
To actually
it
do,
is. It actually is. I've never really understood how it works.
There's some guys in my neighborhood that they're mechanics, right? And they don't fit, when something breaks at their house, they don't like just chuck the thing and order a new one.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, this one little thing broke on it, so they'll make like a new cover to something. And they'll just put the specs in, and
Does it have to have like a certain material in the 3D printer?
yeah, so that's what's interesting, which is so with the stuff that I've seen, and I've not seen it like totally like printing it out all the way. I mean, I've seen something printing, but it doesn't, like lays it on.
Yeah.
But plastic, or there's some metal that can use and melt down and then print that
Yeah.
into a solid part or however you want it to be. It may not be the same color, but it's plastic and it could actually have a little different feel and look to it. I mean, of course, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, whatever you put in. So I don't understand if they've got like a little hopper there of your cells,
Yeah, something.
but something along those lines. But there's something more to where you're actually printing a pancreas but they have made these, right? Like miniature ones. I don't understand why they'd say miniature if they got it, if that means that they took something, from a baby and then made it. But it's not stem cell where they're growing it. They're actually printing these, right, to match
Yeah.
up, but using, in this particular example, the girl's ear, right?
Yeah.
And so, let's see, blood flow is achieved. The blood flow, I mean, what an interesting thing. They print something and now they're attaching it. I mean,
And
does
there's
it already
blood
have
flow in
blood in it,
Yeah.
So
Well, and do
there's
they
some-
have to, like, if you were regrowing something like that, wouldn't you have to somehow connect it to where it's, well, I guess with an ear, it wouldn't really have to connect to the brain much. But, like, even, like, how would it, I wonder, change temperature and stuff? Like, it's still living cells, right? So, like, if your ears get hot or something, would the one ear just get hot and then the other one is still like cold because it's maybe not
I
connected?
think
or
blood's flown through it. So they attach it, right? I mean,
yeah,
are there little blood vessels that are hanging out that they've got to be able to attach? I don't think so. I think they just get it to the, they'll cut the skin, attach it, sew it so that you've got an open end to an open end. I'm guessing to some degree, right?
yeah,
We're talking about this, but I mean, you start reading through this and it's like they've done human lung scaffolds, so it's not like full lung, but they were able to print. I keep wanting to say grow
yeah, because it almost
because you
sounds
the
like
cloning
that.
and things
Yeah.
like they've made there, and you hear them growing like you do that. I think it sounds to me like they've brought processes together, which is
Yeah.
just mind-boggling to me,
Uh-huh.
right? Because it's making something that's living.
Yeah.
How long can it live for? Does it have to print in a certain time frame? It doesn't actually go into that, but it talks about how they have done some of these surgeries. Now they're starting to do them on humans and things, right? Where it's been not unethical things,
Yeah.
where life and death. You know, it's like, hey, I'm just attached. Anybody
Yeah.
can go get plastic surgery, so to speak.
Exactly.
Whether they grew it from their own cells to be printed, just crazy. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is. And yet he called it uneventful. You know, what I mean, because it just attached. It worked.
Yeah.
But they were talking about how they've been doing it with animals. For some reason, a lot of times when they get like closer to doing it with pigs, you know, there must be something similar to the way
Yeah.
their skin and tissue and everything works to ours
Uh-huh.
to be able to work like that. But it talks about the 4,000 kilometers of capillaries, 200 million alveol, you know, air sac, the tiny air sacs in a lung. They're able to do it and print them, right? I mean, they've shown that they can do that.
That's crazy.
I
So
know.
someone with lung cancer, they could
Yeah.
probably heal him.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you know, unless you died with anesthesia or there's
Yeah.
something else or a complication or a blood clot, there's all those factors, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But they exist no matter what you're doing. This
Yeah.
surgery, right? I mean, so it's anyway, it's very very interesting. And it does actually go into how the process works there. So anyway, the last 2 decades is what they've said is that they had some things that there were some breakthroughs, and then in this field it just kind of like, you know, accelerated. I mean, 20 years if you look at that, it seems like a long time, but where they've actually got to where they can do it, right?
Well, and just imagine in the next 20 years,
Yeah.
how much further along that'll be. Even 10 years. We were talking about this a little bit last time after we stopped filming, but I recently read the book by Tony Robbins called Life Force. And in that book, the very first chapter, it's one of the like world-renowned doctor scientist guys, and he's talking about how in the decade of 2030, we will have these like nanocells that we can inject into us, and they essentially will be able to go and find any sickness, any disease, any illness, and kill it. And so does that mean that we'll be living to 150 if we can't really die from the most common things that kill us?
Yeah.
And if we're being able to print organs and do all sorts of stuff, if we're living to that long, how do you think that's going to affect everything?
Wow. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that would change. You know, if you go back in history and they talk about what changed the economies and industries and everything, they talk about, you know, World War II, who's making a lot of the stuff that's being sent to the soldiers over there. Women stepped
Yeah.
up. They went to the factories. So the guys come home and they're like, I got a pretty good paying job. And all the other social things aside from that, it's that they've got doubled the workforce, right?
Yeah.
So you know, what you were making before. So there was growth in but now we're talking about, I mean, like right now, I don't know the numbers. I don't. I wish I didn't even think to look them up. But what we spend on healthcare, right? And there's a lot of discussion like, hey, you know, when they get a little older, it's like, hey, you know, we're not really preserving this life that much longer, right? There's not. We're just basically propping this up a little bit longer to have a little better quality of life, right?
Yeah.
That's how they look at it. It's not like, I mean, you know, if they're printing that, they could print some other body parts, you know, a toe or even things like that. Where diabetes.
Well, I wonder if they could even print like better, just like almost an overall better body as you age. Like maybe skin that's not wrinkled. You could get like a fresh suit of skin or something. I mean, who knows where it could go?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, seriously, why, if you had that, I mean, the procedures that people do for plastic surgery,
Yeah.
so that they're cutting and pulling and
Yeah.
doing all those things, it's like, wow, okay, if you're taking the skin off your face and you're cutting it, right? What's the difference? Why wouldn't it be better? Maybe you inject some stuff in there so it's working from that side, and then you
Yeah.
could put some new skin on top of it. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, it's a very interesting thing, and I these are not out of what we're talking about right now. is not far from what they're discussing, right? So
Yeah.
just to, well, they talk about, like you were talking about the material. So they say, everything to do with it is, the name of the game is cells, right? So they
Yeah.
get the cells. Now, how, I don't know, it seems to me like there's different cells that work, so I don't know how they get to that point. But they talk about using syringes that are loading into the machine that's doing the 3D printing. They squeeze it out through the nozzle, and it's like a thick icing of a cake. Is that like that consistency, right? And they were saying this, so the bioprinter starts doing the process. So it doesn't say, like I said, the time frame, but it gives a little maybe different visual, you know, because I was like, what do they do? Is it growing in there? No,
Yeah.
they've got some cells. They're squirting it in. So they made them, produced them up to a certain point. That's why I was saying, like, lead time, right? It's not like it could be in like an emergency saving
Yeah.
thing, I think, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll
Maybe
advance
one
some things
day.
there
Yeah.
to where it can grow really fast. But it sounds like once they have enough cells to make the new body part or whatever else, then they can squeeze it in there. It prints in a very, so a mini heart. I don't know what scale, it doesn't say what scale it is, but it took about 4 hours to print. Well,
Really?
actually what I said, you know, diagnosed, yeah, so a
That's
mini
not
heart.
too long at all.
No, I mean, they keep people alive longer
Yeah.
than that, waiting for the heart to be delivered, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes, so yeah, I mean, you know, you bring it up, we're sitting here talking about it. I did read through this before, but it was like, you know, I mean, cartilage, all these different things, skin over the top. They're doing it, right?
Yeah.
So they figured out how to do it. They're going to do it better. And you say what time frame? I mean, I know they're already saying, and this is before this came out. Your generation will live to over 100. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
there's just already too many things that we've made in society, medicines and knowledge that we have to keep us alive. The goal is don't be too abusive. We can't, you know, you fall off a cliff
Yeah.
and you die, but then there's like parts of this I'm thinking, okay, I don't think they can 3D print a brain
Yeah.
or something like that, you know, so,
I
but if
think
you could
it's
keep it
too
alive and
complex.
oxygenated, you know, I mean, maybe there is something they could do.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just,
I think I think that is the one thing that they probably won't ever be able to replicate is the brain because it's so complex.
yeah,
And so I think as long as the brain is working, well, and who knows with like Neuralink, what it could do for a brain. I mean, if the brain's dead and they could print out a brain and then put the Neuralink on
the
it,
chips in there.
and then it's just going again. I mean, who knows?
Who
It's really
knows?
crazy.
It is crazy. And, you know, maybe just a part of the brain, you know what I mean, that you do need, like,
Yeah.
you know, like people have an injury and they'll say, oh, you know, it was a frontal lobe
Yeah.
injury. You know, the rest of the brain's fine, but they're really compulsive, right? I mean, they're you know, swearing and, you know, doing stuff, but they can't think through the process of it, or they'll get lost doing it. You know, I've thought about that. I mean, you know, what if you could like print something like that, put it into your brain with Neuralink, where we already know. So I haven't even looked into it. But I have been, you know, what I've heard and read is that Neuralink could fix my eye. My eye's okay. They just got to get to that part of the brain that just, you start seeing out of it. I don't know what it would take, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why, and maybe I've got plenty of things to do and look at here, but right now, and I see fine, right, with these glasses as I've gotten a little bit older, but I guess, you know, with everything right now, it's a really good article. In fact, really quick, I want to see if I can at least just give the date because it's worth looking up. This is a pretty interesting article, and it would lead you to some other things. I don't see the date for whatever reason on here. Oh, no, it's 8 days ago, and in Fortune magazine. So, yeah, very interesting article, and they do have some other links to some other articles on this. But I guess in finishing up what we're talking about, this is interesting, right? Everything that we want to discuss here is just things that will make our life better. We're not trying to concentrate on the negative things,
Yeah.
you know.
Just
and
exciting stuff.
it's exciting stuff,
Yeah.
and we really are living in a time that, you know, when you look at like the early 1900s when they were coming with all these advancements in cars, and I mean, that would have been a great time to be alive, right? And
I think we're going through a similar like transition of the world in this time period right now, which is crazy to think about because things were kind of stagnant for a little bit, I feel like. And you could probably speak on that more than me because I mean, I wasn't around, but I feel like things were stagnant, and then like even I feel like 2010 or something, just like things really have started taking off the past 10, 15 years in technological advancements.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know why, I think there's different generations. Like, it's that old, strong men create good times. Good
Yeah.
times create
Weak
weak
men.
men. Weak men create strong men. Or,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm missing a
The
step.
same.
The point is, I think that when things are advanced to a certain point and the life's pretty good, it might go a couple generations without people pushing the
Yeah.
envelope, And and there's a quote, and you're going to always hear us talking about Elon Musk with reverence to some degree, right? Because I love that he just doesn't put himself out there as like all-knowing, right?
Yeah.
That's not what it is. He's like, we'll just get it done. People, like, let's think about it, right? And there was an interview that I saw of him. I don't remember who was interviewing, but he said, we take for granted that we just think, like, everybody that's now, it's like you go from, it was the iPod
Oh yeah.
4 that looked like the
Yeah.
iPhone 4, right? It was like, there was that transition,
Yeah.
going to and then it's the 4S, the 5, 6, 8,
To 14.
yeah, 14,
at
with
now.
all, and now it's like, literally, it's like, if you do, like, to me, it seemed like it went slow. It's like, oh my gosh, it was a short time period.
Oh yeah.
10 years ago was that, and now you got this phone that is taking picture. I mean, I've got some pictures of some of my initial, and the iPhone one's actually pretty good, but I had one with, those crappy little
Yeah.
cameras on your phone, and I thought they looked pretty good.
Yeah.
And I was actually comparing them. It's like, they're grainy. I mean, it's like, how could you
Yeah.
even think they were good? Well, there's nothing to compare them to.
Exactly.
It was the best phone one that
Yeah.
they had back then, right? And it's made it so where, I mean, these cameras that we use now are just incredible, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that there is. I think and I think you guys, your generation, has embraced that things are just going to keep getting better. Elon Musk, what he said in there is like, we take for granted. He said, we landed on the moon in '69, and then we did it a couple more times and did some, had some vehicles that we've left up there. And,
Yeah.
and he said, man, it was like every time they went up and they didn't have an accident. That Apollo 13, where they actually did make it back, right?
Yeah.
And now people are saying, we didn't, it was all scripted. We didn't get on the moon. If you have a good enough telescope, you can see. They actually left like 3 little things so it'll like make a triangle. We've been to the moon. We've got it. But his point was, after that, the space shuttle was not outer orbit, right? It was high, but it was still in our atmosphere when it was going around there. And he said it got down to where he said we went from having launch after launch to where we blew it up. I mean,
It didn't even exist anymore.
yeah, it's like, hey, we killed the program, right? I mean, it's not even like NASA wasn't. It's like, okay, we can launch these things. Then they were still having to shoot it up with a rocket that they were not even trying to recover. And so when he comes along, he's just like, I mean, you can see why they thought he was like talking like Chinese to the people. It's like, what are you talking about? But that's it. I think we have what's going on now. If we embrace that, we can keep making life better.
Yeah.
And if we don't get scared of it, from the AI part, because we're gonna,
Yeah.
that's where we're at, right? I mean, we're pushing the boundaries of normal
Yeah.
advancements that are, I mean, to have something you could inject into your body to go hunt for those things,
Yeah.
just you don't know. I mean, whatever it is, sickness, common cold, or even out on the lookout for things that are just starting,
Cancer,
right?
whatever. Yeah.
Infectious type things. I mean, what a crazy, crazy time to be alive, and what a wonderful time to be alive. And I
Yeah.
think that's where just keep embracing that. I think that's it.
Yeah. I think so.
So, yeah. So, any comments, likes, all that stuff? Let us know what you think about that, and if you like these topics that we're talking about, and if we could do it from a different angle. But we're excited about it, and we're excited to maybe be a part of this in different ways, And
Yeah.
so, yeah. Please subscribe, like, and we'll see you next week.